Coming to you live from Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome to Africa Focus, where we bring you news from across the continent right here on Switch TV Kenya. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. Start interacting with us on our social media platforms at Switch TV Kenya, at Joel Chacha M on Twitter, and as well on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya and Joel Chacha. Send in an SMS via 22999 free of charge. But first, here are stories making headlines.
The owners of an artisanal cheesery believe the coronavirus outbreak could push people to join the slow food movement. Ebola cases rise in DRC, sounding alarm weeks after the country officially declared an end to the epidemic.
We begin with Africa Roundup stories.
The Malian opposition alliance that demands President Ibrahim Boubacar to step down has cancelled over high-risk protests. Demonstrators had been set for Friday, but the so-called June 5 movement decided to transform them into memorial services for victims killed in violence last week. According to an official tally, 3 days of the clashes with the security forces left 11 dead and 158 injured, Mali's bloodiest toll from political unrest in years. The news was announced as envoys from Mali's neighborhood, led by former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, arrived in Bamako to mediate the escalating political crisis. Representatives from the 15-nation economic community of West African states, ECOWAS, are trying to bridge apparently irreconcilable differences between Keita and a protest movement that demands his resignation. The June 5 movement, an alliance of political, social and civil society leaders gathered around a powerful imam named Mohamed Diko, is tapping into deep-seated anger. Malians are worried and frustrated by an 80-year-old jihadist insurgency that has claimed thousands of lives, driven hundreds of thousands from their homes and swept into Niger and Burkina Faso. In the latest violence that plagues the north and center of the country, 7 farmers were killed by gunmen. Many Malians are also incensed at perceived government corruption and the outcome of long-delayed parliamentary elections in March and April that handed victory to Keita's party. Tension was high as the opposition had planned a ceremony of sacrifice and prayer for protest victims. Clashes erupt in Sierra Leone over protest against removal of electricity generator in Makeni. Security forces fire tear gas at locals protesting against the government decision to relocate an electricity generator to the town of Lungi. At least 5 people were killed in rioting sparked by the relocation of a power plant. The West African state had been planning to move the plant to the country's international airport near the capital Freetown, which is due to resume flights after a month-long hiatus. But an initial attempt triggered a riot early. Protesters attacked the offices of the President Julius Maada Bio's political party in Makeni when police fired live rounds and tear gas. A police official said that the 5 had been killed and 12 others seriously injured in the unrest at nighttime curfew that had been imposed on the town of some 110,000 people. Sierra Leone's Energy Ministry released a statement blaming the unrest on ill-motivated youths. It said that the international airport is in dire need of electricity and that the government had decided to relocate the power plant after consulting with officials in Makeni. Makeni will continue to receive power supply for a nearby hydroelectric plant. Sierra Leone shut its international airport in March in a bid to stem coronavirus infections in the nation of some 7.5 million people. The former British colony has registered 1,688 coronavirus cases to date, with 63 fatalities. As with other poor countries in the region, coronavirus restrictions have taken an economic toll, spurring sporadic protests in Sierra Leone in May. In northern Nigeria, authorities used the COVID-19 crisis to ban informal Koranic schools. Governors of 19 states across the northern Nigeria ban informal Islamic madrasa schools where students are taught the Quran but have to beg on the streets. The students, most of them underage, live in squalid and cramped accommodations, which make them more vulnerable to the virus. Kano harbors the largest number of the around 10 million child beggars in the north. They are wandering across the city for alms potentially aids the virus to spread. which has prompted the officials to act despite several failed attempts to end the practice. Now the spread of the coronavirus has sparked renewed efforts from authorities to close down the school and send the pupils home to their families. The governor of the 19 states across northern Nigeria in May announced a ban on the informal Islamic centers over fears they would become hubs for spreading the disease. He said the aim was to ultimately replace the schools with a hybrid Islamic and modern education system regulated by authorities. Leaders in Nigeria have repeatedly spoken about the need to reform the system, but so far there has been little progress towards changing the deeply ingrained practice. For generations, it has been a tradition in Muslim-majority northern Nigeria for parents to send their sons from as young as 6 to local clinics to learn the Quran.
On to other news, the owners of an artisanal cheesery in Clarence, nestled in the Maluti Mountains of South Africa's Free State Province, believe the coronavirus outbreak could push people to join the slow food movement. After Noah's Cheese lost about 2/3 of its business due to the lockdown, Danny and Mariji turned their focus toward their online shop or other store, hoping to tap into that budding market.
Cheddar making was put on hold when coronavirus struck an artisanal cheesery on the outskirts of Clarence, a town tucked into the foothills of the Maluti Mountains of central South Africa. Hard cheese requiring months of ripening were no longer available, and the small businesses battled to stay afloat as sales plummeted. Cheese maker Marie Crowther only managed to produce small amounts of her product as rare buyers were found among the few butchers, shops and delis that stayed open during the virus lockdown. But with the restrictions eased and customers trickling back, Marie and her husband Danny believe coronavirus could boost demand for locally produced food in the long run.
We believe that cheese making is not just about making cheese, it's also an art. So most of our cheeses are pretty unique. We try to give people something that doesn't exist in other places, and it proved to be popular.
Problem. So it has affected us, but we're carrying on, and we now obviously have to reinvent yourself. So we're definitely going to basically want to launch our online store within the next 2 weeks, so that we can ship to anywhere in the country. I think that's a route that everybody's taking. You have to adapt or die.
But there's not much now stock there.
For foodies who believe in produce grown from nearby sources, in the belief that it retains nutrients and flavors that may be lost through transport and carriers, a far small carbon footprint, and in a disaster like COVID-19 pandemic, favors its production. But local food of this purity can be near to impossible to achieve in a world of long, complex supply lines and dependence on fossil fuels. The small cheesery says it has overcome these concerns.
So people helped us, friends helped us financially, and fortunately we're off the grid, so other expenses like electricity, for instance, we don't have to pay electricity, because we're on solar. So,
and I think we'll probably globally see a move away from this highly centralized big corporate food providers. The cost in terms of the environment, the risk when something like a disaster like this happens, I think is too high. So it's a fun cheese.
Nestled at the bottom of a rock formation named after Mount Ararat, Noah's Cheese runs entirely on a solar energy and sources its raw materials from surrounding land. The short supply chains and small-scale nature of slow food production has seen new interest for consumers concerned about food provision during lockdown. The mozzarella is smoked with wood from the neighboring apple farm. Condiments are made with fruit pulp left over from the nearby gin breweries.
So the message is, eat what is in season, know where your food is coming from, and support the farmer or the producer directly where you can. And we talk about good, clean, fair food.
The couple have worked hard to find new deals and currently negotiating shelf space with a local supermarket chain. They also have high hopes in the launch of an online shop that will deliver cheese directly to customers stuck at home.
Elsewhere, Ebola cases are rising in New DR Congo outbreak. This is the 11th outbreak of Ebola hemorrhagic fever in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is spreading in the Equator province, that is northwest, raising the first alarm bells.
The Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo's northwest is growing, sounding the alarm weeks after the country officially declared an end to the separate Ebola epidemic, which claimed over 2,000 lives. There have been 54 confirmed cases since June 1st in Mbandaka, a transport hub in Equator province, including 22 deaths. There are 4 additional suspected cases. The outbreak is DRC Congo's 11th since Ebola was identified in 1976. On June 25th, the vast Central Africa country officially declared an end to an Ebola epidemic that broke out in the East 2 years ago, which Health Minister Etienne Longodo said was the longest, most complex and deadliest in the country's history. According to the World Health Organization, the two epidemics have no common viral strain. The WHO called the latest figure of great concern, saying it had identified 56 new cases.
There are now 56 cases, and this is of great concern, particularly as it is now surpassing the previous outbreak in this area, which was closed off and controlled at a total of 54 cases.
The virus is passed on by contact with the blood-body fluid secretion of organs of an infected or recently deceased person. The death rate is typically high, ranging up to 90% in some outbreaks. Serge Ngaletebo, a doctor at the Bikoro Hospital, said the epidemic affects an area with fragile health. Democratic Republic of Congo is also struggling with the new coronavirus pandemic. WHO officials worry that because of this competing health crisis, there could be a lack of funding for the Ebola epidemic. Ebola experts say the experience of the Eastern outbreak will be vital for informing further action. Health authorities have launched a vaccination campaign, as was done in the East, where 2 experimental vaccines were widely deployed, and more than 320,000 people received a jab.
Time to take a breather. Stay with us here on Africa Focus. Still to come.
In Nigeria, African researchers blaze a trail in virus fight.
Welcome back to Africa Focus. My name is Joel. Church and our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. Moving on, regional mediators arrived in Mali in a bid to restore peace after deadly anti-government protests. Also, South African doctors are also taking part in coronavirus vaccine trial, and Senegal restarts international flights.
Regional mediators have arrived in Mali to try and broker peace in an escalating political crisis following deadly protests. Former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan led a delegation from the Economic Community of West African States, known as ECOWAS, to have talks with President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta and a protest movement demanding his resignation. At least 11 people died in 3 days of unrest after thousands of Malians took to the streets in the capital Bamako last Friday. Demonstrators set fire to Parliament and the public broadcast television. Security forces attacked the protest movement's offices.
The fight we are waging is to restore the Malian nation, to give this nation its dignity and honor. It is to ensure that this catastrophic governance that has brought us to the situation where Mali is being ruined before our eyes is no longer a reality but a memory.
In power since 2013, the president has been accused of corruption and failing to solve jihadist attacks and the struggling economy. In a bid to calm the unrest, he announced the dissolution of the Constitutional Court.
Everyone will agree that this time all the limits of tolerance have been reached and exceeded. Extremely serious facts have been raised which deserve examination and certainly appropriate judicial sanction.
Qui mérite examen et assurément sanctions judiciaires appropriées.
Demonstrators want the president to step down, the dissolution of parliament and the formation of a transitional government. Satellite pictures taken in June and July this year show rising water levels in the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, aggravating diplomatic issues between Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan on the use of the Nile River. The dam has been a source of tension in the Nile River basin ever since Ethiopia broke ground on it in 2011. Downstream countries, Egypt and Sudan, worry it will restrict vital water supplies. Addis Ababa long intended to start filling the dam's reservoir this month, in the middle of its rainy season. But authorities downplayed the recent rising levels, saying this was a natural part of the construction process. Cairo and Khartoum are pushing for the three countries first to reach an agreement on how it will be operated. Africa currently has more than 650,000 confirmed cases of the coronavirus. Half of those are in South Africa, which is doing the continent's first vaccine trials. Earlier this year, there was an outcry at allegations that Western nations would test potentially dangerous vaccines on Africans. In light of such fears, 6 academic doctors of Johannesburg's University of the Witwatersrand themselves volunteered to take part.
This is something that should be supported and encouraged, and that no one need be afraid of it. There has been some concern, among the lay public, but as a doctor, I'll tell you, this is nothing to be afraid of.
As and when a vaccine is found, the African Union has said it wants to be the central point of contact in terms of coordinating distribution.
We want to approach this as a continent and avoid a scenario where individual manufacturers approach countries as such to do that. We are not seeking to control efforts from different countries or the vaccine manufacturers, but we seek to coordinate.
Hospitals and clinics in South Africa's Eastern Cape province are bearing the brunt of the coronavirus outbreak, and its under-equipped healthcare system is pushing overworked staff to the brink of exhaustion.
It's a mental tiredness, it's an emotional tiredness, it's a physical tiredness. And I think I'm certainly trying to find the balance of how to keep going in a way that is sustainable. I think we all head out of the blocks at 100 miles an hour and then eventually you just grind to a halt.
The financial pressures are huge, and the largest private ambulance service in the city of Port Elizabeth is just about able to continue operations.
I don't think we could sustain it for another 3 months, and we've worked really hard to our staff have already taken a 30% knock, and we're now building our way back up to normal.
And Senegal resumes international flights after 4 months, having shut down air routes because of the coronavirus pandemic. At Dakar International Airport, authorities have implemented stringent sanitary measures to avoid imported cases.
Today, to come to Senegal, we demand strict compliance with border measures, namely the wearing of masks. Everybody wears a mask and maintains physical distance, and this includes in seating areas. There's hand sanitizer everywhere, even at the ATMs.
Passengers departing for the West African country are required to present proof from an approved laboratory that they have tested negative for the coronavirus within the previous 7 days.
Run by a Cameroon-raised Harvard-trained molecular biologist, the African Center of Excellence for Genomics of Infectious Diseases, that's ACGID, has been at the forefront in the fight of killer diseases such as Ebola, Lassa fever, and now COVID-19.
Strong people don't put others down, they lift them up. So says the discreet sign at the entrance to one of the most remarkable research facilities in Africa. Run by a Cameroon-raised Harvard-trained molecular biologist, the African Center of Excellence for Genomics of Infectious Diseases has been at the forefront in the fight of killer diseases such as Ebola, Lassa fever, and now COVID-19. The force behind the lab is Professor Christian Happy, who has a steely belief in catapulting young African scientists to the top of scientific research.
Resources. The wealth of Africa should also be seen in the viruses, in the parasites, and in its natural biodiversity, which includes, microorganisms. And then we should use it effectively, not just as a way to cry to the world that we are infected, but as a way to show the world that we can develop solutions, not only to protect Africa, but also to export the solution to protect the rest of the world.
And so DNA.
We sequenced the first COVID-19 virus in Africa in the lab in 48 hours. That wasn't possible. Even in China, it's not possible, or in Europe. No laboratory has broken that record.
Happy founded his laboratory in 2016 in an aging building at Redeemers University in Ede, an unassuming town in southwest Nigeria, with the help of funding from the World Bank and Nigeria and foreign philanthropists. Nigeria has officially recorded around 800 deaths and more than 30,000 cases, but the true extent of infection is likely to be much wider, given huge dense populations in Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja and Kano, where social distancing is almost impossible. Happy's team in Ede has developed a fast-track test that has already been certified by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and is currently being vetted for use in Nigeria and across Africa.
The viral copy. So if the virus is present in any of the samples, we'll have what we call a CT value. So the CT value can actually quantify for the amount of the virus in the sample.
Happy's quest for simplicity is being conducted with state-of-the-art equipment. It was the first lab to sequence the genetic profile of the new coronavirus in Africa, a feat that took just a few days after the first case of the disease showed up in Lagos in early March. It wasn't his interest in malaria that brought him home, but Lassa fever, a deadly hemorrhagic cousin of Ebola. In 2007, learning about the disease that killed around 700 Nigerians each year, Happy was stupefied to find that tests for Lassa was sent to Germany. In the time it took to get the results back, 90% of patients had already died.
On to other news. Hundreds of lay Catholics marched in the Democratic Republic of Congo's capital, Kinshasa, against the appointment of Ronsard Malonda as the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Take a look.
We are working for the Seni. This time we want a depoliticized Seni, a credible Seni, so that we no longer know the chaos that we experienced in 2018.
There are young people who were shot, killed in front of churches in order that we might have credible elections. It is in this memory that we carry, so we can no longer accept that the stage for the electoral chaos that was carried out in 2018 is once again set. There must be a reform of the organic law on the Seni. There is even a bill which is on the table of the National Assembly with the opinions and considerations of the government.
Also, dozens of Sudanese protested in the capital Khartoum against recent government reforms they consider anti-Islamic, including allowing non-Muslim to drink alcohol.
Justice Minister Nasruddin Abdul Bari said that Muslims majority now in Sudan allow non-Muslims to consume alcohol on the condition that it does not disturb the peace and they don't do so in public. He also said that converting from Islam to another religion would be decriminalized. The announcement came a day after the country criminalized female genital mutilation.
We won't allow bars to reopen. We won't allow prostitution again. This people is a Muslim people, and this is the voice of the people.
Protesters took to the streets of Khartoum after Muslim prayers in the east and north of the capital. They shouted slogans including "God laws shall not be replaced" and carried banners reading "No to secularism." Late last month, Hamdok had pledged to announce decision that may have major impact in the country. Security forces blocked streets in central Khartoum and bridges connecting the capital with its twin city of Omdurman. As in Sudan, men, women and children are all Muslims by nature. We won't allow any interference in Islam. We won't allow any distortion of the laws of Islam. And today it is our duty to take to the streets until the government falls, God willing. Islamists largely stayed on the sidelines of the nationwide demonstration. Under Bashir's 30-year rule, the country adopted a more radical cause of Islam, hosting Al-Qaeda Foundation Osama bin Laden between 1992 and 1996. It also imposed punishments including flogging and sent jihadist volunteers to fight in the country's civil war with the South Sudanese.
And that's all we had on Africa Focus today, but keep the conversation going on our social media platforms at Switch TV Kenya, at Joel Chacha M on Twitter, and as well on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya. My name is Joel Chacha and our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. Until next time, do have yourself a great day.